food in England is interesting. There are many great things about England, and the British food is probably lower on that list of great things. That doesn't mean they're not great cooks. It's just the type of food that is very British is very, it's more plain than other foods. A lot of potatoes, a lot of vegetables, and it's great, but very plain. And so we got probably our most, the foods that missionaries enjoyed the most were the ethnic foods. A lot of African foods, a lot of Indian foods. Indian's my personal favorite. But there were also some English dishes that I loved. Their roasted potatoes just are to die for. I wish we had them more here in America, but I love their roasted potatoes. I love their desserts. Their trifles are to die for. And fish and chips is always a good option as well. But yeah, the cultural foods are... England brings probably the best out of the cultural foods, especially the Indian foods, and the Chinese food is great there. The foods from South America are pretty good as well. Just awesome foods from every culture are found in England, and it's a great place to go out and try things. I highly encourage the missionaries going there to just try new things, go out to whatever restaurant they see and just try it out, because they're going to have a good experience. Maybe find some interesting things, but they're going to love it. So English people, they love this snack called sausage rolls, and I never fell in love with them, but they're just basically a sausage or a little hot dog type thing in a little biscuit, and they love them. They die for them. And I had a lot of friends who served there, and they were just like, yeah, we love them now. I was like, mate, I don't know where you got that love from, because I don't love sausage rolls. They're okay. But they also have a dish called toad in a hole, which is sausage in this baked, breaded dish. They love sausage for some reason. And so there's a lot of sausage in England that you'll find.
One thing that they do love is fish and chips. They call them chippies. So you'd go to the chippy and get fish and chips, which chips are just fries. They're thick fries. But they also love this thing called a kebab. And the kebab it's like a lamb meat. And it's slow turned on this cooker. And then they put it in a pita bread with a salad or lettuce and vegetables. And it's an experience. But I like it. But some missionaries really don't. But
so you've got the basic British palate, which is really plain food. A lot of it has influenced what we have now. So if you think about our Sunday roast, well, the British have their famous roast, and it's the same idea. You've got potatoes, which they would call mash instead of mashed potatoes. You've got parsnips. You've got a lot of roasted vegetables, some sort of meat. Everything's in gravy. Everything gets mixed together, and that was the most common thing that we'd have there. Besides that, you've got any sort of pie. They do meat pies all the time. Anything in a pastry the British love. You have a pastry, a savory pastry for dinner, and then for dessert or for pudding, they would say, you have a sweet pastry. And then because it's just such a global community as well, you have so much immigration that people have brought their own food tastes there. And so there's actually more curry places than there are pubs anymore in England. Because there's such a strong South Asian influence there. As well, when I was in London, you've got different ethnic neighborhoods that you're around. And so you can go to the Turkish community and have food there. You can go 10 minutes down the road to the African community and get a lot of African and Jamaican food. You can go 10 minutes further down the road and have another. You can have Nepalese food. And so that was fun. It's something I really miss. I can't go into the store now and just get an easy curry really easily.
England was a perfect place for me because I just love junk food. And in England, it's the only place, or it's the only place on the planet where you could get, in the same store, you could get pizza, you could get fried chicken, you could get Indian food, you could get Middle Eastern food all at the same time. Sometimes on the same thing. So, for example, you have the pizza, hamburgers, fried chicken, and there are Indian influences such as, the various curries, and curries are really good in England. And there's this thing called a doner kebab. You will definitely learn to know what it is. Some might love it, I love it, some might hate it, but I feel it may be, doesn't do the body the good. What it is in the States, I think we call it a gyro or a hero. It has a lot of names, but it's a block of, if you can imagine, lamb spam, and it's on a rotisserie, and it just spins around, and there's a heat source, and it kind of chars the side, and the person just shaves it off for you and put it in this usually pretty big piece of bread called naan bread, and they put all sorts of toppings on top, and wow, it just, the caloric content of that is probably minimum 2 Big Macs, easy. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. Another food I really like, this, and oftentimes as a missionary you'll get fed this. It's called a Sunday roast. I think it's their common proper meal, where you have the baked or charred turkey or chicken, and then you have the steamed vegetables, obviously, and two things is really special and good in England. One is the Yorkshire pudding, and it's kind of a pastry deal. You pour gravy in it, and another one is their kind of roasted potatoes. I don't know how they do it, but they peel it and they put it in the oven and roast it. The outside is really crispy and flavorful, and the inside is very soft, and that's a common enjoyment of missionaries. And drink-wise, a specialty in England is called slur. Schlur, more if you want to be fancy about it. Really, it's just kind of like sparkling fruit juice. And then most of the times, people will reserve that for the holiday, Christmas, New Year, and a lot of times members would have it for missionaries as they come over, because it is a special treat for them to have the missionaries come over.
The food in England, there's a lot of good food, but there's also a lot of very mediocre food. One of the classic meals that members loved making for us that were, originally from England is you go over and they'd have like their Sunday roast. And so it consists of usually having your meat, you have roasted parsnips, you have roasted potatoes as well as mashed potatoes, usually have carrots, peas, and specifically in Manchester, in the north of England, they have what's known as Yorkshire Puddings. Now, Yorkshire Puddings, it's kind of like a bread, it's almost like a small bowl that's like a fried bread, and they're really, really good. You usually put like a little bit of food in it or potatoes in it. And then English people love gravy, and so you're going to put gravy over absolutely everything, over the meat, over all your vegetables, over the Yorkshire pudding. They really, really love that. Some of the classic English desserts, you get things like a trifle. A trifle is where you have some kind of like bread substance at the bottom. It can be like a sponge cake. I've seen people do it with like an angel food cake type of substance. And then there's usually like a layer of Jello, and then also like a layer of, and then by the way, in England they don't call it Jello, they call it jelly. So if they talk about jelly, they're talking about the Jello. And then on top they usually have kind of a creamy substance. Sometimes it's kind of like a yogurt type of substance, but it's more creamy. And trifles are really, really good. Another common thing that you'll see is if you have other desserts, a lot of times they'll put either custard or cream on top. The custard is kind of like almost like a vanilla-y flavor a little bit, but it's not. It's really good though. But they'll put it like on apple pie, or they'll put it on any kind of dessert you can think of. And then cream is really, really good on fruit and other types of foods. And so a lot of times after like a classic English meal, they'll bring out a dessert, and they'll pour the cream on top of it. Even if it's like a cake, or if it's like a brownie type of dish, they'll a lot of times put cream on top of it. Now those are the English meals. Some of the other classic English meals are also fish and chips. Most corners will have like a fish and chip shop, and they'll wrap it up in the newspaper, and they have the chips, and they'll have gravy available for you if you want to put on the chips, or they'll have, and chips of course are what we refer to here is almost like French fries. Or what they'll do is a lot of times they'll have like a curry sauce, so they'll actually pour curry sauce on top of the chips, or you can dip the chips into curry sauce. So that was a favorite of mine, is having with curry sauce instead of ketchup. So they'll get the big battered fish, and they'll pour a lot of salt on it and lots of vinegar on it, and it's awesome if you find a good fish and chip shop. Some are not as good as others, but most of them are awesome. Something else that's really common to a lot of the English communities is curry shops. And so the English people love curry food. I'd say curry, Indian food or curry is to England what Mexican food is to us. We have a lot of like Mexican type places, that we love to go and get that. It's kind of the same for England. It's a huge staple for them. They love going out to like the curry shops and getting curry. And a lot of people, have curry quite often. I know a lot of families that would have curry like once a week or once every 2 weeks. Whereas here in America, it's not as common for us to cook, as many curries. So there's lots of curries available, and you'll have plenty of opportunities to try that if you're serving in England. One of the other things I love about England is it has such a diverse culture. So you have people from all over the world. You have people from China. You have people from all over Africa, all over Europe. You don't get as many people that are from South America. But with this rich expanse and diversity of cultures, you also have the opportunity to try a lot of different types of food. And so some of the things, there are things that I loved that I got to try from a lot of cultures. If I met people from the Caribbean, they'd usually make rice and peas, which is rice with kidney beans. And they'd also make like a jerk chicken, which is really, really good, and fried plantain, which I'd strongly recommend. I also tried pig's feet from a friend who was from Zimbabwe. I wouldn't try that again. I tried chicken feet from some friends in China. I wouldn't try that again. Tried oxtail from some other friends in Africa. I've had whole fish, with a lot of friends from Africa, and you eat it with just your fingers, and a lot of times you'll have it like a fufu if they're from Nigeria, or you'll have it like a sadza iwisi if they're from the south of Africa, such as Zimbabwe. And so a lot of like the African dishes specifically, you'll eat with your hands, and so you'll get like a little bit of this doughy substance, and get some of the rice or get some of the vegetables, and you'll eat it with your hands. You kind of got to get used to that a little bit. And kind of the same with a lot of the Caribbean food is you gotta eat it with your hands, with the chicken or other foods that you'll have. I had some awesome foods from all over the place, and if you're serving in England, give everything a try once. Don't, I definitely say don't discount anything, but give everything a shot.
English food isn't that different from American food. It's just less sugary and less tasteful. So it wasn't that big of a adjustment to English food, but the thing about the London mission is it's very diverse. So I didn't have traditional English food a whole lot. I worked with a lot of Africans and a lot of Portuguese people. So a ton of rice. And the national dish of England is actually curry. So more rice. So English food, the adjustment coming home was actually harder because here it's just like so much. And it was just too much for me. But going there, it was fine. They like chicken, which is great. Mashed potatoes. They just call some things differently, like baked potatoes or jacket potatoes there. And they have those a lot. Like, they're on the menu of every restaurant and every fast food place. The international food that I had, I'm really bad with spicy stuff. And Africans really like spicy things. So those dinner appointments, their chicken is really delicious, but their rice is really, really spicy. And so I would just keep eating and not stop, because if I stopped, I couldn't keep going.
English food. It's interesting, I would say. It's different. Very different from American food. It's funny to see, not really funny, but I feel like it's interesting. It's interesting to see how English people, they are very organized with their life. I feel like they don't really like changes. They like patterns. So I remember whenever we go to the member's house to have dinner, usually it's always roast dinner on Sunday. On Sunday it's always roast dinner. And whatever you eat, you always eat with gravy. You eat shepherd's pie with gravy. Chicken pot pie with gravy. And like everything with gravy. And for dessert, they call it pudding somehow. And they always eat dessert with custard, hot custard. And you eat sponge cake with custard. You eat cheesecake sometimes with custard. You eat apple pie, apple crumble with custard. Yeah, I just found that very interesting. Almost everyone is the same, no matter which area I move to and go to those dinner appointments with the members. It's the same, which I think is good because I'm not a big fan of trying new food. Well, I do like trying new foods, but I'm not very adventurous in this area. So it's good that whenever I go to the member, I can always expect what I will be eating, so I won't be too nervous and worry, oh, what if I don't like this or don't like that. Yeah, English food is pretty normal compared to Taiwanese food. There's not many scary things. Oh, something that was really interesting in my mission is it's also a type of food in England. Well, actually it's Turkish, but it's really popular there. It's called kebab. Kebab is Turkish barbecue, and you eat it in like pita bread. Yeah, as missionaries always says that missionaries in England always say that you need to get kebab ties. Well, kebab ties can have two meanings. First, it means that you need to have at least kebab for once when you're there, so you're getting kebab ties. And another meaning is that when you have a baptism, you get kebab with your companions to celebrate. Yeah, so yeah, if you go on your mission in England, you will hear this phrase kebab ties a lot. So if you serve in an area with a lot of Africans, Brazilians, even Chinese people, like my suggestion, well, probably is not a problem for elders, but for sisters, probably don't schedule more than one dinner appointment, one meal appointment in one day, because they feed you really well, especially Brazilians and Africans. They're so friendly. They just want you to eat and eat and eat. Even you can't eat anymore, they will ask you to eat more and more. And it's not polite to reject them. Like, it's really, really, really not polite to say no to their food. So you have to eat a lot. So yeah, if you have a dinner appointment for lunch, then don't schedule anything for dinner. And if you have a dinner appointment, try not to eat too much for lunch.
I hope I don't offend like any English people when I say this, but my favorite food from England was actually Indian. It's curry. In most England, it's the national dish of England now. It's called tikka masala, and there's a lot of other different types of curry that you can eat, and they're just so amazing. So it's like rice and chicken with like a sauce in it, and it's just so good. But as well, food in England, you've got traditional fish and chips. That's something everyone loves, to go to the chippy, and it's a lot different than anything else you've ever had, especially if you're stateside. It's huge. It's I don't even like fish, and I like fish and chips. And they like to add loads of salt and vinegar to their chips, because that's what it's not fries anymore. It's chips, and that's one of the things that you get to start thinking English. Use your vocab, like rubbish. These aren't pants, because pants are your underwear, so it's trousers. You have to like learn the lingo and find out what to say and what not to say. Otherwise, you get yourself in trouble. And so let's see. Otherwise, food. Oh. The members there love to feed you. They like, my favorite food is Italian. Like, I like, well, spaghetti, lasagna, things like that. And the amount of spaghetti and lasagna I ate on my mission was phenomenal. Like, there was a lot. And I think it's because members know missionaries will eat it, and it's easier to make, so they do it. But I never complained because I loved it. And so basically, you'll get loads of food. We do a lot of cooking for yourself. If you want to, you can eat really healthy as well in your mission. I know that's one thing you get so tired as a missionary, you want to eat healthy. So we'd make like smoothies for our breakfast, like throwing some frozen fruit and things like that, mix in a bit of vegetables and on your way and things like that. So you can do basically whatever you want. If you go to a grocery store and you can cook for yourself, all the apartments or flats is what they're called in England in the mission are pretty nice. So compared to some of my friends' horror stories about using a hose out of the sink and stuff like that, we've got it really nice. So traditional foods as well. Almost every Sunday we get invited over to a member's home for like a traditional English Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner that would include Yorkshire puddings, which are like, they're kind of like rolls but way better. They're like a little bowl thing that you put gravy in and you can put your potatoes in it, and then there'll be like chicken, and you'll eat Brussels sprouts a lot, different types of cabbage and stuff, but it's a really good meal and it's just traditional. A lot of gravy goes a long way, so it's super good. Sausage and things like that. And then as well, because there's so many different cultures and you meet people from all over the world, you get to try a lot of different things. There were a few African families that I became really close to on my mission, and they were always the best, feeding us amazing food, so that was definitely a privilege. Custard. Custard is something as well that you don't really find in America, but it's kind of like what we'd call pudding, but it's nothing like it. It's like more vanilla flavored and a lot runnier, and you heat it up and pour it over like apple pie or things like that. But that's something that English people like drink. They live for it. So that's something you're going to run across as well. They don't call it dessert. They call it pudding in general, which can be really confusing at first, but you just get used to that.
You hear a lot of bad things about English food, but what I found is that it's just not true. There's a lot of good food there, and a lot of it is because there's so many cultures there. So my favorite food there, for sure, was curry. I love curry, and you get fed, members will feed you curry pretty often, and I also learned how to cook curry when I was there. And then there's lots of other good Indian foods as well. So the Indian food there is awesome. The fish and chips are also very good. They're not very healthy for you, so you probably shouldn't eat them too often, but whenever we did have them, they were really good. It's just something really crazy. I don't know if you've heard of a Mars bar before. A Mars bar is like a Snickers bar, kind of, but there's not really peanuts. It's just caramel and toffee and chocolate, and they fry Mars bars at their fish and chip shops, and wow. I only had one the whole time I was there because it was too much. It was tasty, but wow, it was loaded. It was really greasy. Other than that, a lot of times you'll get fed like this, like a roast dinner. So like on a Sunday, they'll roast like some sort of meat, maybe chicken or beef or pork, and then you'll have a lot of steamed vegetables with it. So when it comes to this English food, it is true that can be somewhat bland. It's this, yeah, like I said, roast meat, steamed vegetables, and then a lot of gravy. It's good, but yeah, probably not as flavorful as some of the other foods. But there's such a mix there. A lot of Chinese food as well that I ended up I like the food plenty good there. So.